Welcome aboard Rocket Ship, the platform with the most relevant content for competitive examinations. This is Rocket Ship IAS Lab and continuing with our series on answer writing for general studies papers of civil service main examination. We take up a question that you might come across in GS paper 2. Please read out the question carefully. Constitution holds in a special trust for the weak and vulnerable. Nowhere it is more apparent than in the extra mile that the Constitution covers, enumerating the rights of children. Explain with appropriate examples. So, the question is framed in a manner where the first part of the question, actually the opening lines of the question, makes a particular observation about the rights of children and the constitution, actually rather the rights of the weak and vulnerable, a special provision for the weak and vulnerable. And in the second part you have to connect this idea that the constitution makes extra provision, constitution goes an extra mile for the rights of the weak and vulnerable. You have to connect this idea with the rights of the children, that is the constitution and the special provision it makes for the rights of the children. You have to explain this idea with appropriate examples. We are introducing our answer with the very important observation, with a very important quote by a well-known person, that is, there is no trust more sacred than the one the world holds with children. This observation, this quote was made by Sri Kofi Annan, which you probably know is a former United Nations Secretary General. To expand on this idea, children, due to their lack of agency and not yet mature enough to deal with complex realities of life, are vulnerable to exploitation. Again, this does not need much explanation that children are not mature enough to deal with the harsh realities of life. That actually makes them susceptible to various forms of exploitations. The energy too must be invested in aiding the march of human civilization through their curiosity and creativity rather than being expended on sheer survival. We are essentially pointing to the problem of child labor. What child labor does, child labor essentially deprives the children of the opportunity of adding to the corpus of, you could say, the knowledge, the shared knowledge of humanity. Essentially what education does, education empowers you to expand the ideas, the expand the knowledge corpus, the entire, you could say, a storage of knowledge of humanity that can be of various benefits to people in general. But suppose a child has to, you could say, engage in labor. Actually, if he is engaged in child labor just for sheer survival, just to fill his belly, it would mean that it would essentially be a great loss to entire humanity. That the opportunity of this child, that he could actually add something to, you could say, like expanding the horizons of humanity through his, you could say, innate curiosity and creativity, this opportunity is essentially lost to everyone. These matters were kept in mind while appending provisions aimed at welfare of children in our constitution. That the founding fathers, our constitution makers, had these ideas in mind while they made special provisions for children. That is why the constitution goes extra mile to treat requirements of children. So, what are the children's rights that the constitution explicates? Taking them one by one, first is the exceptional position of children. The constitution itself recognizes the exceptional position of children, that is the children, due to virtually due to the, you could say, callowness of their age, due to their, you could say, freshness of their age, have to be treated separately. They have to be treated exceptionally from other people. That is the entire idea under Article 15(3). Empowering children to play their part in future. How can it be done? Through providing them education That is what the right to education under Article 21A does. Protecting children from exploitation. That is the whole idea about with Article 24, which essentially prohibits child labor. Article 24 prohibits child labor so that children are not exploited. Health, nutrition, and early childhood care. Health, nutrition, and early childhood care. All of these are essentially provided by Article 45 under Directive Principles of State Policy. Protection from material and emotional neglect. This is an idea that is, you could say, provided by it would appear that Article 39F is short on details, that it does not explain what the idea it is actually trying to say, but it's a very, very important argument. It makes a very, very important moral argument, which we would see later. Explaining these points, affirming the special needs of children, Constitution makes an exception to right to equality and inserts Article 15(3) to enable special provisions for children. So we can say that Article 15(3) is an exception to the right to equality. That is, while everyone is equal, due to the special nature of children, the special requirements of children, the state is empowered to actually treat them differently. Education empowers children to play their suitable role in future. It also creates, that is, education creates awareness about their rights and duties. Recognizing this, Article 21A was inserted by 86th Constitutional Amendment of 2002. This article provisions free and compulsory education for all children in the age group of 6 to 14 years as a matter of fundamental rights. So, the right to education under Article 21A is a fundamental right. Not only a child laborer foregoes invaluable opportunity of studying and essentially expanding to the knowledge of humanity, the entire knowledge corpus of humanity, but also he is vulnerable to various forms of exploitation and susceptible to occupational hazards. For an example, many kinds of, you could say, accidents, occupational accidents. The Constitution therefore prohibits employment of children below 14 years under Article 24, and we would see it how important this article is in the landmark PUDR, that is the People Union for Democratic Rights. In the landmark PUDR versus Union of India, the Honorable Supreme Court held that Article 24 operated proprio vigor. That is, Article 24 operated proprio vigor, that is, even without an enabling legislation. What the essential idea is that in the PUDR versus Union of India, the Honorable Supreme Court held that the entire ideal under Article 24 does not need an enabling legislation. That is, it's not necessary that an action can be taken against the violators of Article 24, that is, violators of children's rights under Article 24, that there must be a legislation, must be an act present. They can be, you could say, prosecuted even without it. Nevertheless, Prohibition of Child Labor Act of 1986 was enacted to explain, or rather detail, on the Article 24. In Unni Krishnan versus Andhra Pradesh of 1993, Honorable Supreme Court held that directive on Article 45 had taken the form of a fundamental right, elaborated by 86th Constitutional Amendment of 2002, inserting Article 21A. So again, this is another very, very important landmark legislation in India. Landmark judicial pronouncement in India, Unni Krishnan versus State of Andhra Pradesh. What the Unni Krishnan judgment says, it says that some of the directive principles had taken the form of fundamental rights, because the court argued that much time had passed since the constitution coming into effect, and the state was in no position to make excuse that it did not have the time or resources to actually give, you could say, give effect to the directive, the particular directive under Article 45, as the state already had enough time and certainly resources. The directive under Article 45 had taken the form of a fundamental right, which the constitution, which the government essentially inserted, it clarified on the entire idea by inserting Article 21A through the 86th Constitutional Amendment of 2002. 86th Constitutional Amendment further amended Article 45 to provide for early childhood care for children below 6 years. So this is a basic difference between Article 45 and 21A. 21A, you might recall, it is right to education and it applies to children from 6 to 14 years of age. Article 21A applies to children from 6 to 14 years of age, while Article 45 applies to children below 6 years of age. So this is basic difference between Article 45 and Article 21A. ICDS, that is Integrated Child Development Services, which are popularly called Anganwadi, it builds on the theme of Article 45. That is, it provides for early childhood care for children who are below 6 years of age. That is essentially what the Anganwadi is all about. Now, this very important observation that children have to be provided a healthy climate to grow and nurtured with emotional warmth. Article 39F calls on protecting children from material and emotional abandonment. Try to understand it through an example. What material abandonment would mean? Suppose a child's parents were poor. Even in that case, the state has to ensure that the worst effects of poverty do not fall on the child. Just because his parents are poor, a child does not have to face the, you could say, brunt of poverty. This is the essential idea under Article 39F. Moreover, Article 39F also says that the child does not have to be abandoned in the emotional sense as well. Now, the conclusion we are making here is the Constitution, it's a very important observation that the Constitution transcends its political charter to treat rights of children as a moral imperative, as a moral covenant. So while the major part of the Constitution, the major body of the Constitution is essentially framed as a political document, but when it comes to children's right, the Constitution takes a more moral inclination. It actually makes, you could say, it actually goes towards moral ideas, moral imperative, and the moral imperative is children's rights. Not only it pledges to protect children from exploitation, it also vows to train them as empowered citizens through education, through right to education, and enjoins creating a materially adequate and emotionally warm environment for children to grow. That was the essential entire idea under Article 39F. So this is what the Constitution essentially does. You could say entire inclination that the Constitution adopts towards children, that is due to their exceptional position, the Constitution is empowered to make all forms of, you could say, provisions for children, which it essentially does. That is, it not only vows to protect children from exploitation, it makes arrangement for their training through right to education. Moreover, it essentially promises them to create an emotionally warm and materially adequate environment where children can grow. This is all for today. We would reassemble for the next lecture in a few days. As usual, we wish you all the best. Thank you.